Yes, we are live. Happy Tuesday, besties and bosses. How are you all doing? How was everybody's weekend? I'm just pulling this up in the group to make sure I can see y'all. I also feel like I need to adjust the volume here. Let's see if I can find so I can see my comments. There we go. I'm live. I can see myself. This is exciting. It doesn't usually happen that easily. Well, yay, here we are. How's everyone doing? I know we are all in various states and navigating what's going on in the world in different ways. It's interesting this weekend. I had one of the most social 2 weeks I've had in a while. I had quite a few, full couple of weeks onboarding some new clients, which is lovely, and I love them, and that's been lovely. But I also had I think I shared with y'all, my husband and I celebrate our anniversary, so we had a big weekend with that. And then it seems like every night there was like an event to go to, a friend's birthday, a party for something, a different thing we were going to. So just coming off the tail end of that, and I'm one of those people. I know y'all have to tell me if this is a thing. I know ambivert, like we can be introvert to extrovert. I'm technically, when I do Myers-Briggs, an extrovert, but I think I like hit my max capacity on extroversion. I'm like an extrovert who just wants one-on-one conversations and doesn't do gets, I think, drained by groups. So after that much like group in the city, I had a couple clients in town. I had a mastermind friend in town. Gosh, we had so many things. It's like something every week. I'm like, okay, now I need some like introversion or like recouping solo time. So that's how I'm doing. So I'm now gonna probably spend the next couple days watching horrible TV. That's what's going on in my world. Now let's chat about what we're digging into today. So today we're going to talk about the leadership skill everybody needs to scale to 1 million, or whatever you want to scale to. Say to 1 million because I think this is one of those skill sets in particular. If you want to bring your business to high multi-six figures to $1 million, I think this is so essential, and this is a conversation I'm having with a lot of my clients at that stage of business. However, I do think this is a skill set you need in business, full stop, if you want to scale to six figures. But I think it becomes that much more important the more clients you're holding, the more money you're bringing in. And I think this is also just something people don't want to talk about a lot and want to avoid, especially my heart-centered folks. I know this is one of the biggest growth edges for me as well when it comes to leadership. So just to normalize that. So we're going to dig into that today. I always have a giveaway, so let me make sure I'm offering you, what are my notes here? Today, if you join me live, leave me a comment, tell me you're here, leave me an emoji. I'm giving away one copy of my 6-week sales course, Sell Out Without Feeling Like a Sellout. This walks you through both the mindset and the practical strategy of creating a simple sales process that is heart-centered, as we like to say, that is service-driven, that is without the ick, that really walks you through how to both think about selling from a place of integrity, from a place of service, as well as how to get in front of people, to connect with potential leads, how to actually have those sales conversations, to close and to keep a sale on the back end. So it's a 6-week sales course, and leave me a comment, say hi, and someone will get access to that course as a gift from me to you, because I love having you here live. I love having you here on the replay as well, but it is fun to be when you're live, and it also just helps for everyone to have those conversations and get to hear what everyone is thinking about these things. Okay, so let's talk leadership. Let's talk this conversation. So this conversation actually comes, one of my clients was in town last week before, one of the social activities that I'm sharing with you that I've had. We went to Soho House and had a lovely breakfast together and got to hang out. And she works with leaders, and she works with quite a few leaders in the corporate space as a coach. And we were just having a conversation leadership about some of the things she's working on. She's doing some really exciting stuff, which is fun. I've been with her since kind of the start of her business. It's very cool when you get to meet your clients in person, but also when you get to see just she's one of those people who's had like things on her vision board, and every time we talk there's like a new thing that she's created. It's very, very fun to celebrate that. One of the things she was talking about, and this was kind of where this conversation was like, oh, I need to have this with my people. She was talking about how one of the new larger clients companies she has been brought on to do some of the leadership coaching with, how there is a manager there, and I don't think there's any way any of this would betray any confidentiality. So pretty sure this is neutral enough that I can share this. But there's someone there who's high up that she's supporting, that essentially she thinks she's gonna have to coach them to let this person go. And the reason for that, and we were just talking about this person's good at what they do, they're very skilled, but it's this leadership skill we're talking about here, and how, and I'm going to share what that is in a second, but how that is really just creating a bottleneck and creating challenges and really impacting the company and impacting this manager's ability to lead and to really create the change that's needed for this company to run efficiently and to be able to grow, to be profitable. And I was like, oh, I just wish more people could hear this, because I really think, and I'll explain what this is in a second, but I just want to not tease it out, but I just want to give some context here. I really think this is one of those things that so many of us think either isn't all that important or is a nice to have. And I just really appreciated having the conversation with someone who's not in maybe who's in our space, but in a different way, and who's seen this on such a bigger, more global scale. Because I think what's interesting for us, most of us as small business owners, I think a lot of you, right, wanted to get out of corporate. I think there's a lot we don't like about corporate. We want to almost like be opposite from corporate. However, corporate dollars, corporate money, like there are certain things that are not horrible about corporate that I think sometimes we do ourselves a disservice not to pay attention to and not to be mindful of and to ignore. And honestly, this is something we were talking about that I've seen as a challenge in a lot of startups. My husband's worked at some startups when he was taking a break from acting, and I've seen this as a challenge even in startups and the corporate space. So let's dig into what this is. But this is what I want to talk about, because I think this is just one of those skill sets no one talks about, even in the corporate space, but they do a little bit more. We can see the impact more there, and I think it's really important for us to understand why. I'm going to share a little bit about my personal experience with this leadership skill, how it's cost me time and money in my business, how this has been, it really has, it's been such a learning curve for me, and I'm going to just break some of those things down. I'm going to talk about how this negatively impacts business growth and why no one wants to lean into this. And I'm also going to talk about why I do think you can scale to 6 figures without this, but I think it's damn near impossible to scale to $1 million, definitely sustain it without that. If you're on my email list and you got the prep for this, one of the things I was saying is I think as business owners, one of the things. All right, we are live again. This is so funny, y'all. I'm going to try to see if I can pick us right back up. It's showing that I'm going live still in my group from the other one. So this is really weird what's happening. So we're gonna continue with this. Hopefully I will be able to have you pick up from the first one if you missed this. I'm so sorry. I have no idea what happened, but here I can see myself. So here we go. I can see myself live. So if you missed the first couple of minutes of this, you're catching this on the replay or catching this later. If you want, below I dropped the link for the first 7 or 8 minutes or so. It's a little bit more of me catching up on what's going on in my world, some fun stuff. The giveaway we're giving today, which is my 6-week sales course, sell out without feeling like a sellout. You just got to say hi, let me know you're here. And then we just started digging into this topic. We're talking about leadership. This is something I was having a conversation with one of my clients who works with large clients in the corporate space, and we were just talking about how this skill set really hinders people in that space and really it's a fireable offense. It's something she's considering firing someone over, and how I think this is something that you can get to 6 figures, I think, without this skill set, but I think it's really tough to get to the $1 million mark or even the high multi-6-figure mark in business. And I think it is definitely something that makes it hard to sustain business. So we were just kind of teasing out what we were going to talk about, just giving you that quick recap. And what that really is, and let's just dig into like, what is this thing now? We've been talking about it for 10 minutes, and then we'll break this apart and talk about, how this impacts business, why this happens, and really what I would offer to think about as a different way to think about this and lean into this leadership skill. So I think one of the biggest leadership skill that I think really keeps people stuck, limits your ability to grow as a business owner, really harms your ability as a leader, and I think it is a fireable offense in the corporate world, is being too nice and caring too much about being liked. Now, I will tell you right now, even just saying that, there's a part of me that bristles, that I'm like, oh, do I even want to say that out loud? And this is definitely one of the, I think, biggest edges I've had to lean into. So I'm going to share more about that and how this has cost me money and time in business. But let's just talk about this a little bit, because I think as caring, heart-centered business owners, right? We want to be liked. We want to be nice, right? I think we almost hear this and it's like, what the fuck, Kim? Like, what am I supposed to be? The opposite of nice? Am I supposed to be a bitch? Am I supposed to be mean? Are you saying that great leadership is like being a jerk? And that is not at all what I am saying. However, I do think it is, if your focus in business is on being nice and on being liked, a couple things are happening. First and foremost, business is becoming very personal. We've talked about this in so many different ways in this group, in different live streams, and different conversations. And again, I think this is just a tougher one for those of us who are in the caring professions, for those of us who are passion driven, for those of us who are heart centered, for those of us who are bleeding hearts, who are empaths, who are sensitive people who care so much. I think what we tend to do is make business very personal. I think sometimes we can get enmeshed with our businesses a little bit, even with our clients. And the truth is, the truth of all truths in business is not personal. It's really not about you or I. It is about the services that we provide. It's about the problems we solve. It's about how we're supporting our clients. It's not so much a popularity contest and if you're liked or not. It's not really about if you as a human are nice or not. It's great if you're nice, but that's not really what we're doing in business. And I think you can be a kind person, and I think we can maybe reframe nice and being liked with honesty, with being direct, right? One of the things I really like to think about is I prefer honesty over trying to be nice in business, and I would rather be respected than I would like to be liked. I mean, look, it's great to be liked. I love that I have relationships with my clients. I just told you, clients were in town this week, and I met them at Soho House, and we got to talk. Like I love that. It's not that I don't want to be liked. Let's be clear here, and it's not that I don't want to be a nice human, but when as leaders in our businesses, when that is, we're holding that so dearly, what it ends up doing is causing a lot of friction around the very things we need to be able to do as leaders in our business. It is really tough to do your business well, and it's tough to scale to multi-6, 7 figures, to hold a lot of clients, to lead a team, to be efficient in business when your main priority is how can I make sure I'm liked, right? I mean, when we're focusing on being nice and being liked, as opposed to being respected, as opposed to being honest, as opposed to being direct, right? As opposed to putting our clients and our business and the problems we're solving, the service we're delivering first and foremost, what happens is it's really tough to have the important conversations you need to. It's tough with clients to do your job. For most of us as service providers, there are lots of times your business and your clients are paying you to be direct, to be honest, to deliver a service, not to be nice, not to be their friend, right? My clients don't pay me to be their friend. They don't pay me to be nice. They pay me to be honest. I work with a lot of clients who make far more money than me. And I've had one of my clients who's at the like 800K mark on their way to $1 million, who's renews with me a year at a time. One of the things they told me is one of the reasons they value my support is they know I'm one of the few people who is going to give it to them straight and who's always going to be honest with them, even if I'm going to say something I know they're not going to like or that they don't want to hear, and that is invaluable to them, right? But for me to do that, I have to be willing to not put my want as a human to be liked and to be nice first above my role, my job as a service provider, as a coach, as someone who's being paid money for a very specific role in this person's business, right? We can see how those become such a conflict because when we are putting niceties and being liked, right? Popularity over our job, it is just tough to sometimes give the honest truth. We tend to sugarcoat things. Sometimes we get into people-pleasing behavior. I think it's really tough to have hard conversations. I think when you're leading a team, it is really tough to lead a team if your main focus is how can I be liked by everyone on my team, right? It's hard to delegate. It's hard to give feedback. It's hard to give corrections. It's hard to ask for what you want. I've seen this with so many of my clients when I'm coaching them and helping them lean into this skill set and lean into leadership with their team. We have to work around this so much because otherwise what's happening is they're paying people and they're taking on some of the work they're paying people for. They're redoing things. They're taking on literally the things they're delegating because they don't want to be they don't want to be mean to someone. They don't want to give feedback to someone that they really need to, who's not doing things in the way they want or need. I think what's also challenging here is then this is where we get a lot of resentments in business, whether it's with clients or with team. I have one client, we were talking about this recently, she was having a lot of resentment around her team and like no one was doing anything. This was like this whole thing, like no one was doing what they were supposed to. Everybody was dropping the ball. Everyone was flaky. Everyone was costing all this money. And when we took a look at what was going on, like I guess on the surface, things weren't happening, but one of the challenges she was having is she was really focused on being nice and being liked and really not having the hard conversations, not giving really clear, direct communication in terms of deliverables, what expectations were, what she really needed from team members. And so they had nothing to go by, right? I think sometimes we think that if we're trying to be liked and we're being easy and we're not being direct and we're not being hard on people, that is somehow feels better to people. And what actually happens is when we're in a leadership role and we're trying to be so likable and so nice and people pleasing, and we're not communicating really clearly and we're not setting and holding boundaries really clearly, I find what usually happens is on the other side, it actually doesn't feel all that great, because I also have clients who are service providers in terms of like being OBMs or designers, or they're more in the, what do you want to call it, like creating deliverables for people. And it is so challenging when you're in that role and someone is just trying so hard to have you like them that they're not spelling out just really clearly what they need from you and giving you that direct, like, this is what I need you to do, or giving you that clear, honest feedback. It's really confusing then. And most people want to do a good job. Most people, I really believe, I know we've had some challenges in our space this year. Y'all let me know if you have questions as I'm going through this, or reflections, of course, because I'm just sort of like on a rant around this. But we've had challenges in our space, and there's just been a lot coming out around, people who aren't delivering or who aren't who they say they are, and all the smoke and mirrors. But what I have seen to be true from the clients I work with, and I only work with clients one-on-one, so I see a lot behind the scenes. What I've seen to be true from the people I've hired, I've been in business for 7.5, going on 8 years now. What I've seen to be true through my peers is most people are who they say they are. Most people, while people might not be perfect and people might make mistakes and people might not always, do everything exactly the way you want, most people in our space, I think, truly are really trying and want to do a good job and want to deliver. But it is really fucking hard to do that if you don't have clarity around what you need to show up for, what the expectations are, and if you're not getting feedback. It's really, really tough as a team member if someone just wants to be nice and just wants to be liked, and it's just sort of like yesing everything you're doing. And meanwhile, they're pissed off and they're resentful and they're telling their coach how much their team sucks. And if their coach isn't willing to say, like, hey, wait a second, maybe this is starting with leadership. Like, I know this is hard to hear, but leadership is a top-down thing in business. Like, we kind of do have to look at, like, what is your role in this? What's going on? I think it's very easy for people just to get fired, right? And just to get let go of, or to have just this conflict and friction where it's like, then the narrative is no one does what they're supposed to do. No one follows through. All support that's virtual sucks and like doesn't understand me, right? Like, it's really easy for these stories to get created and perpetuated. And not all of the time, but some of the time, what I see is it really is stemming from this challenge point of so badly wanting to be nice, wanting to be liked, that there is just a lack of very clear communication. And I really do think that this is again something that it's just one of those things no one wants to talk about, right? It's so much sexier to talk about how to go out and book more clients. It's so much easier, honestly, if you're having these challenges in your business, to just let someone go, or to just blame the industry, or just to blame every service provider ever, or just to think like, ugh, no one understands my business, no one can do this, like, I always just hire the worst people, right? I think that's just an easier, in some ways, for the brain to latch onto than to say like, oh, maybe there's a little bit here that has to do with my leadership style. Maybe there's a little bit here that has to do with my want to be liked, my challenges with having some of these harder conversations and giving feedback, right? Like, who wants to talk about that? But what I see to be true across the board and what I've experienced myself is this just tends to be kind of like this insidious thing that really is affecting so many businesses, and it will affect your profitability. I think it really will affect your ability to scale as well, because we just talked about it on the team side of things. And if this is helpful to hear, Mike, because I think I was sharing this on the first snippet before we like lost video. I have no idea what happened there. But when my client was in town where this conversation started, I was like, oh, I need to bring this to my people. She was talking about how there was someone in a management role at one of the companies she's been brought on to do some leadership coaching to kind of clean things up. And she was just talking about how, they're good at what they do, but this is a challenge they have, and it's costing the company money, and it is going to keep the company from expanding, because if there isn't someone in that role as a manager, as a leader, right? All of us are managers in some ways. If there isn't someone in that role who's able to have the conversations that need to be had, who's able to identify the changes that need to be made, who's able to be really direct, who's able to give honest feedback, who's able to handle someone that they're speaking to, maybe not liking them in the moment, but loving them long term because of what's going on, right? If that person isn't capable of doing that, right, there is literally, like, that is the bottleneck. Your business can't grow past that for all of you. If you're, and this really shows up on the client side of things too, right? It's really tough to serve clients really well, and especially if you want to scale in a more traditional, like, Ascension model way and hold lots of clients, that's really tough to do if your number one goal as a leader is to be nice and to be liked, right? Because and again, this doesn't mean that you won't be liked. I think I need to keep coming back to this. I think you will be more liked by not trying to be liked. It's that when we are leading business as leaders from the place of, I so deeply need to be liked because maybe I have a past trauma, because I have a wound, because I have an insecurity, because I think I'm not good enough, because of the space I'm in. I think a lot of the caring professions, this is especially true for therapists, are taught certain things around what it means to do things right, because I was taught as a young child that this is how I could be lovable or acceptable, right? I think there's a lot of programming that most of us in caring professions have. So I understand the deep want to be nice and to be liked and how this can be tough to unwind. But I really think that if we can start to reframe this and to see you can still be liked as a leader, but it's actually, I think, the toughest to be liked when your goal and when you're leading from the place of, I'm just trying to be nice and be liked. And I think of a good way to explain this. Because when you're trying to be nice and trying to be liked, right, you're probably not being honest. You're probably not setting boundaries. It's very likely you're going to get burned out. It's very likely you're going to say yes to things you don't want to say yes to. It's very likely you're not going to serve your clients and do your job in the way you need to, because you're going to be worried about hurting someone's feelings. You're just going to sugarcoat things. And those are the very things that, ironically, even though it's coming from a place of trying to be nice and trying to be liked, those are the very things, ironically, that will have clients get really frustrated, or that will have team members get really frustrated. And so really and truly, if you want to be liked, I think I want to be so mindful of how I say this, because I really do think, and this is literally the hardest pill for me to swallow as a business owner. Business is not personal, and the more we can separate out the personal, and the more we can separate out our personal want and desire to be liked and to be likable from our businesses, I think the more you can run at serving your clients really well and helping them get results, leading your team really well, getting big results in business, marketing the way you need to, right? I think the more you can treat business like a business and serve clients really well. That being said, I get that you're human. I'm human too, right? Like, of course, I still care if people like me or not. But I think then what's helpful to see is if you can focus instead on, how can I do my job really well? How can I serve? How can I be honest? How can I be direct? How can I be transparent? How can I really be respected? How can I lead with those qualities as my guiding light? I think those are actually the qualities that will get you liked. And so again, I want to be super mindful that we're not hearing this conversation backwards, and now I'm both saying, wait, if you're trying to be nice and be liked, that is the leadership skill that makes it tough to make millions, and like, right? That doesn't make sense. And when I'm also then saying, but here's the way you can be liked. But I do think there is a little bit of this irony here when we're not trying so hard to please, when we're not getting so enmeshed in our businesses and with our clients and with our team. I think the irony is that is actually what has you not only gain respect, but get likability. I do think there is this interesting thing, and this could just be my own personal journey. I'd be so curious to hear from all of you, but I do think the want to be nice overall is I think it's just I think that it is an edge, but I think I think that is something that will have more detriment in most businesses than anything else. But I think it's such a sneaky one because I do think it's so drilled into so many of us in terms of what is the quality you really need to have. And I think our brains hear that the opposite of that is now you're going to be a bitch. Now you're going to be an asshole. Now you have to be a jerk, right? And that's why I want to keep giving you these reframes and these different ways to think about it. I know we've talked about this in different ways before on in this group, probably not for like a year or so, but I know when I was younger, one of the things I always got praised for is how nice I am. I think I'm actually quite a nice human being. And it's not until running this business that I really saw, wow, yeah, I'm super nice, but it's interesting. This is my niceties in many ways are such a big hindrance for me in business. And there's a lot of niceties I have that like I think I would rather be honest and respected than nice now. If you had asked me 7.5 years ago when I started my business, that I don't think that was the case at all. It was like being nice and being liked was like the utmost like goal and desire of mine. I've just created such a different narrative and understanding of what those things mean because I've now since looked at so many of the ways I was nice. I honestly don't even think we're all that nice. I think they were nice because I was bending over backwards and people pleasing and saying yes to things I didn't want to say yes to, but how is it that nice? To me, that's not very honest. To me, that's not very transparent. To me now, I just see how like that's just me wanting to avoid conflict or wanting to avoid being honest with people or wanting to avoid holding boundaries or hard conversations. But I don't actually know how nice that is. Like I think nice is just such a really funky word and it almost like has no business in our businesses. And so I really would be interested to hear from those of you what your relationship is with that word and do you hear as the opposite of nice, meaning like, okay, well, if I'm not nice, then I'm going to be a jerk or I'm going to be a bitch. And I want us to keep coming back to maybe there's actually a middle ground and is our goal or aim when we're trying to be nice and be like, is that actually all that nice? When I think about what I think I probably thought nice was in the past, right? That's all about actually being of service and supporting other humans. And when I think about some of the behaviors we do when we want to be liked, they're not actually of service, right? They're not actually helping people on our team or in our businesses. And I just think that's a very interesting thing for us to tease apart. And I really think it's one of those things we want to talk so much about neutrality as a CEO, really start to think about as a CEO, what are the leadership qualities that actually are important, that I actually want to strive for, that I actually want to hold? What are the values that are important to me? What are the values that serve me as a CEO so I can run this business like a business? What are the values that allow me to show up and lead in a way that has a really well-functioning, healthy team and business? What are the values and qualities that actually allow me to serve my clients, to help them get the results I'm promising that I'm selling? And I think for most of you, you'll find the qualities that for you as a CEO to achieve those things, niceties and being liked aren't in there. Again, that doesn't mean you can't be kind. It doesn't mean you can't be friends with people. I'm friends with most of my clients, especially the ones I've been, worked with longer term. And I think we really want to tease apart, though, what do we actually mean when we're saying I want to be nice and we're saying I want to be liked. Let me just see here in my notes because I feel like I'm going off on rants a little bit. I know there were a couple specific things here that I wanted to bring up here for you. Oh, this was one of the other things with this. I think too, as a CEO, I think a lot of what I'm supporting clients with is helping them find all the places they're giving their power away in their business and learning how to take their power back so they really can feel empowered and lead from that place. And I think the term power and empowerment is almost like an overused term in our space. And we hear that and it's like, it can almost feel fluffy at this point. But I really, truly want us to think about that from where we started talking about this in the first place. I do think when I'm supporting clients, especially clients who are growing to their first 6 figures, going to make their first 10K a month, a lot of what I see slow people down and slow down or cap their ability to grow, or just where I see a lot of drama in business happen. And my goal with my clients is to have businesses that are drama free, right? Business does not have to equate drama. There's a lot of drama in business. To me, that means there's a lot of emotionality. We're not neutral. There's a lot of things that we're making personal, and or there's a lack of strategy, a lack of systems, a lack of processes. Businesses really shouldn't be filled with drama. I just think sometimes as humans, we can be addicted to drama and then play that addiction, try to get that addiction met in our businesses. So sometimes with my clients, like that's what we're really working on breaking and cleaning up to create more neutrality, to create more of that like boring, well-oiled machine of a business. And this is one of those things that happen there. But what I notice again, and I think this happens at every stage of business, I just think this happens more often at the start of business when you're scaling to your first six figures, is how easy it is to give your power away to different things, whether that is social media, whether that is someone else having all the answers, whether that is someone knowing all the secrets, whether that is worrying about if your team members like you, whether that is wanting to be liked by all your clients, whether that is, thinking that marketing is a popularity contest. It's not, by the way, like it is not a popularity contest, right? But there's all these different ways that as CEOs, we can give our power away. And what I'm always thinking about is, as a CEO, yes, neutrality is one of those parts of your CEO role, but so is harnessing, taking back your power so that you actually can, from a neutral place, show up to lead and run your business like a business. This is one of wanting to be super nice and wanting to be liked by everyone, I think is one of the biggest places we can give our power away that just stifles everything. That is such an energy drain. And we have to even think about, like, of course it is. Think about how much energy goes into people pleasing, into yesing people, into wanting to manage other people's feelings about you. Isn't there, I don't know who said this, but I feel like this is like what every elderly person reminds us, is that other people's opinions of you is none of your business. I think there's a little bit of truth about that in your business. Of course, in terms of client feedback, and if they're feeling supported and served, that is a part of your business, and testimonials and reviews, that is a part of your business. But in terms of if you're liked or not, in terms of, how nice you are or not, I think it just so doesn't have a place in business. But think about how much literal energy and bandwidth and how much of your actual power can get given away then to other people when that is your main priority and focus. And it really then does make it hard to show up and lead in your business. So I do think it's an energy drain, but it's a way power gets given away. And so again, this is just another reason I think it's just very challenging to scale your business past six figures if you're just bleeding power everywhere and you're focused more on being liked than on being respected, than on doing your job really well. Let me just see here some of the things, my other notes here. Okay, two other pieces I want to dig into here. I always think too, let me know if this is true or not, but I think about even who I'm investing in. Look, I like everyone on my team. I love them, right? One of my team members is on mat leave and just had a baby, and like I love my team members. And that's come over time because we've built a relationship. But and of course, like I hire people because I want to know, like, and trust them, right? I think this is where this gets confusing. And I think, say, my clients probably know, like, and trust me. Like, I do think there's a likability factor in terms of who we hire. And I think that's where maybe this concept gets a little confused. And so, of course, that is very valid and true. I liked my coach before I hired her, right? I really love and appreciate her. And so I think those things are true, but that is very different than I hired her just because she's nice or just because she's the person I think is the nicest coach online. I didn't hire the OBM or the VA that I just thought was like the most likable, fun person I want to go hang out with, right? I hired the person who I think can do a really good job. And one of my top values on my team is communication, but direct and clear communication. And everybody on my team and my coach, one of the things I'm paying them for and value them for is not to be my friend. It's like, that's just a bonus that I'm pick people that I also happen to like, but I'm not hiring my coach to be my friend. It's nice if we are also friends, but I'm hiring her to coach me and to have the conversations and to support me in ways that other people can't, and to be good at what she does. I'm hiring my OBM. It's great that I also like her, right? But I'm hiring her to do a very specific job very well, and to trust that she can put her need to be liked, to be nice, on the forefront. And if I'm looking at two people I'm going to hire, yes, of course we want to know, like, and trust them. And like, I think of that likability in terms of, is this someone I want to spend time with? And do we have overlapping values where I want them in my business repeatedly? I don't want someone whose values are really misaligned in my business. That being said, I'm not necessarily going to pick the person who I would like be best friends with over the person who has the skill set and can be more direct and clear in my business. And I think that's where sometimes this can get a little confused. I'm really hoping this makes sense, because I'm just thinking about the conversation I had with my client where she was quite frankly saying, I think I'm going to have to fire this manager. I think they need to let this person go because she is too nice. She cares so much about being liked, and I don't think this is something she's willing to be coached around, and it is just impacting every single thing. We need, like, this is the, like, this business it is capped at this person's want to be liked and to be nice. And unless that's suddenly fundamentally changes, or she really wants to be coached around that and really lean into that edge, this company cannot grow past that. And again, I think it just is one of those things where it's just a tough pill maybe to swallow. And I will keep coming back to this. And I really do think when you're willing to be honest, direct, transparent, respected, over the need to please, over the need to be nice, over the need to be liked, I think that is what ultimately makes you the most likable in a leadership, service driven role. All right, let's talk a little bit though about, because this is what I promised to share you, and I think maybe this is helpful to hear. Here are some ways this showed up for me at the start of my business, and how this cost me money and cost me time, and how this is still a growth edge for me. I think I am a recovering people pleaser. I'm a recovering perfectionist. I think many of the ways I've had coping mechanisms around some of the trauma I've had, and some of the just stuff, the edges that come up for me, I have learned to sort of be accepted and to be safe by being really nice. And I used to get so much praise for that. Like, this was the thing I got praised for, like, more than probably anything as a kid. It was like how nice I was. And I wore that like a badge of honor. Like, that was to me like the number one thing I cared about, was being nice at the expense of boundaries, at the expense of pretty much anything. And I reflect this because I think maybe it's helpful to hear that, like, I get it. Like, this was like the thing I put up on a pedestal for myself in terms of like what I strive to be. I also, and I think this is one of the reasons this can be so challenging, if this is helpful to hear as well, I really learned, and I think for a lot of you who are high achievers, I would be interested to hear if this is something you learned as well. I learned that, this is like, in Australia, don't they call this like the tall poppy syndrome? I learned at a pretty young age, if I shined too bright, people will not like you, right? That is not cool. So if you want to be liked, if you want to fit in, if you want to not get kicked out of the tribe, so to say, right? And we are humans, we are wired for connection, especially when we're in the middle school, high school ages, right? We are, like, our social world is such a big thing there. Like, being a part of that social world, we learn very quickly. I think obviously when you're younger too as a kid, but we learn very quickly, here are the things that will allow you to be accepted, here are the things that will not, especially if you have any sort of like social awareness. I think certain people are wired in different ways around that. I think if you're an empath as well. So I learned, and I'm sure many, I'd be very curious to hear this from others, I learned very quickly, shine too bright, people don't like you. But if you can maybe not shine as brightly, not have too much success, but also if you can like overcompensate with niceness, then that can make all of this other stuff you're doing well at okay. I was a gifted kid. I did really well in school. I was captain of the cheerleading squad. I had a lot of successes that made it very easy for people to really hate on me. And one of the ways I survived, because I had quite a bit of bullying when I was in middle school and high school that was not fun. And one of the ways I like taught myself to cope, or taught myself to like be okay socially, was like, I just figured out how to like be the nicest person ever. And like, it was just then that made me safe and that made me likable. And I'm sharing this here not to give you like too many details, but I think sometimes it's just helpful to have this stuff normalized and to see, for many of you, your story might be very different than mine. For some of you, you might be listening to this, you're like, cool, Kim, guess what? The challenge I don't have is worrying about being liked or worrying about being nice. Like, that is not my thing at all. But I do think many of us who are attracted to coaching, to therapy, to service provide, like many of us have, there's a reason we're attracted to these roles. And so I think sometimes hearing some of these things normalized, and like, oh, it's not that I like suck at boundaries. It's not that I like don't have this capability. It's just I learned certain ways of functioning and certain ways of being at a certain age because that is what sort of served me, right? You in middle school, in high school, in elementary school, wherever that is, for you, again, your story might be very different, but whatever some of your patterns are, whatever some of your coping mechanisms are, if yours happens to be, let me be a people pleaser, maybe I don't have as many boundaries, let me be super nice, let me put others before me and not speak up, let me avoid conflict, right? Let me say yes instead of saying, like, all of these things that are coping mechanisms, we can start to see, oh, it's not that you don't have the ability to do this, it's just that at a different time, that was the coping mechanism that probably worked for you. And now what we get to see is there's a very big difference between you as the human who was in elementary school or the human in middle school or the human in high school that needed to survive, to function, to thrive there, as you that is now the adult running a business, right? And those are two very different people, two very different roles. And I find sometimes thinking about it this way can be helpful because then you see maybe this is less about I have to fundamentally change who I am as a human, but more I can start to see is why I talk so much about the CEO role versus simply mindset. Yes, it's mindset, but I think sometimes we can see it this way where it's like, oh, the coping mechanisms I had when I was younger, that was a role that you learned, right? These are things you learned to function. Being a CEO, this is also a role you can learn, meaning it doesn't necessarily need to be something like you're not capable of, and more something you can think about in terms of, oh, I can see why I played that role when I was younger. How can I now play this role in business so that I can really lead and thrive and have a really healthy business, healthy relationships with my clients, and lead my team in a really healthy way. I hope that made sense, and I hope it's helpful when I share a little bit more nuance. I know for my clients sometimes they like hearing that, but you'll have to let me know, like, Kim TMI or Kim actually. That's super helpful to hear because it just helps me see in myself, even if it's coming from a completely different place, where some of these behaviors might come from, and also then what I might want to shift or how I can think about it differently as a business owner. But let me show you how this So all of that to be said is this was such a growth edge for me when I started my business. And it's something I think I really think I've become a different human in many, I keep saying this, it's the Taylor Swift song. What did she say? She's like, the old Taylor can't come to the phone right now because she's dead, whatever that line is. I feel that way often in my business. I've just done so much work to rewrite who I am. We talk so much about who do you have to be to make 100K, to make $1 million, to make 10K a month, right? Who do you have to be? I've had to become a different version of myself. And this is one of the things I've really had to shift is this want to be liked and these niceties. And this is, I think, why it jumped out to me so much when I see it in my clients and when I hear a client talking about it. But one of the things that, the ways it showed up. And so I'm going to share these so that hopefully if you hear it through me and what I've had to learn and grow through, you can notice where this might be affecting your business, but also not make yourself wrong. Because the last thing I want you to hear around any of this is like, great, now I can't make $1 million in my business, so I'm fucking all of this up. And instead I want you to see like, oh, these are just great things to have awarenesses around. This is a growth and learning edge. This is a leadership skill, right? Learning how to communicate effectively, directly, honestly, learning how to run your business like a business, learning how to think like a CEO, act like a CEO, learning how to be neutral and how to not take everything on personally. This is all a skill set. And so I'm hoping that's what you can learn, where it's like, oh, if Kim could learn this, I can learn this too. So one of the ways this showed up for me that really, I think, probably slowed down part of I wrote a post about this not too long ago that it took me 3 years, 2.5 years to make my first 10K month, 3 years to make my first 6 figures. And one of the reasons for that is because I cared so much about being liked and being nice, I said yes to everything. And this is something I still have to be mindful of. I'm much more clear on this, and it's much easier for me, but there's such an instinctual part of me that just wants to say yes, that just wants to help, right? It's the service provider in me, it's the coach in me. I think many of you will relate to that. But it's also this want to be just to be a nice person and just to be a likable person. And that is not always serving in business. In business, we have to be very clear on what are the things to say yes to that move your business forward, that serve your clients. What are all the things you need to say no to? And this can cost you a lot of time. Had a situation recently where I caught myself in this pattern. I was like, oh, wow, this is fascinating. I care so much about being liked here. I'm literally saying yes to something and like giving away valuable time here that I just need to catch myself, call myself out on this, right? Clean this up. But it basically saying yes to things that really don't make sense in business is a big way this will show up. I would say my first couple of team members, I've had to, I think this is very normal in business. We have team members that we grow with who are on our team for a long time, and then we have team members that we may have to let go of. I had a very hard time having some of the harder conversations with my team members at the start. I think learning how to lead and run a team and delegate to a team has been, I think there is a skill set in that if you haven't done that before. I think even if you've done that in corporate, it is quite different when you're suddenly paying for a team and it's your business and your baby and your systems and processes. And I think one of the things when I hired my first VA a year in, it was just not being willing to have the hard conversations, not being willing to like really be clear and direct in some of the feedback I gave. And then I honestly think I went a little, like the pendulum swung a little bit after that, where I'd say probably a little bit after that, it was almost like, okay, now I'm going to overly like lead from this place of giving direct communication. And I think I've now found that really happy middle ground. But that cost me quite a bit. Honestly, it was an expensive learning curve because that meant a lot of mistakes were happening that I was then cleaning up and I was fixing. I see this in clients now. This is one of the reasons I can spot this. I always say to my clients, you can't get shit past me because I had to do so much growth and so much learning to be this business owner, to be this, to run my business at this level that like, I can spot it all. Even if you got different patterns than me, I can spot your stuff. But that was just it's just an expensive learning curve when, or it makes for a team to be very expensive when you're not having those direct conversations. Either hours aren't getting used efficiently, but also then when you're taking things on and cleaning them up yourself and fixing them yourself because you don't want to point that out to a team member. I mean, can we talk about how silly that is? But that's just what happens. I think what's interesting, I think I've always had an easier time with clients being very, like, that is the place, I think, because that is my craft, right? I've spent money training to be a coach. It's sort of like acting in that, like, I see coaching as a craft. This is my job. This is what people are paying me for. So I think that what's fascinating to me, and maybe this will be helpful for someone to hear with this particular leadership skill set. I just am so aware that what I believe and what I've been taught as a coach is that as a coach, part of my job is really to always speak the truth, right? I have a vow with myself, an unwritten vow with my clients that I will always be direct and speak to the truth. And my job is to hold space and to have hard conversations and to be willing to be the person who says the things that no one else in someone's life will. But that is just something I really learned. This is a part of the job description. This is what people are paying you for. This is what, in air quotes, makes a good coach. So I think because of that is, I did not have a challenge with clients at the start. I've always had a very easy time there practicing what we're talking about. And I share this because I think that's actually quite fascinating to see. The reason for that is I just really understood why that was so valuable and why that was so of service and how that's a part of my job description. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Some of the places that I was saying yes to everything, that I was maybe not delegating to my team really well, where I was maybe not speaking up with people who were defaulting on payment or speaking up when I've been copied. I'm just thinking about some of the other places this sort of pattern has shown up. What's helped me to lean into the CEO role around this is the same thing that helps me as a coach. I've just really taught myself that, but this is simply a part of being a CEO. Part of being a CEO and doing this job in air quotes right. And I really hate using that phrasing because then it sounds like we're saying there's a right and a wrong way to be a CEO. There's a right and a wrong way to be a coach. And I really don't love that shit. But it may be phrasing as, this is a part of my job, this is how I do my job well, this is a part of being of service. When I can frame it that way, it makes it helps me just to see, oh, this has nothing to do with like likable, not likable, safe, not like all of the stuff that can get churned up. It just helps me see this really neutrally as, oh, this is just a part of being of service. And I hold being of service on like, it's a very high value of mine in business. And it makes it much easier to latch into, to then have the harder conversation, to have the direct conversation, like, oh, like this is just part of it. This is a weird example analogy, but we always use the gym as an example, so why not? It's sort of like if you've never worked out before and you don't know what to expect, and then you come join me for a spin class and we have a bunch of sprints and they're just like, we are just like going super fast, and then we're lifting weights and you're just like, what the F is this class, right? Of course you're gonna be like, this is horrible, I don't ever want to go again. But if you're sort of like, hey, this is how a spin class goes, this is just the way a spin class goes, is we're gonna have some slower songs on the bike, we're gonna get up, we're gonna have some sprints, we're gonna do some intervals, we're gonna lift some weights, like this is just the way a spin class is run. And if you want to do spin, this is how you spin, right? It becomes less about like it, don't like it, less about like, oh, like I hate that. It's just, oh, this is just the way it is. And I think if we can take sort of that same neutrality here, where it's like, oh, this is just what it means to be a CEO. Oh, this is just what it means to be a leader. Oh, this is just what it means to be a coach. This is just part of the job. This is just the way it is. I think that can be a frame that makes it a little less charged for those of you who might have some charge come up around holding strong boundaries, having hard conversations, giving really direct feedback. So I hope that part makes sense there. I will say the other, I just made a couple notes here. I think the other place this shows up, and I don't think this shows up for me now, but I think my first year in business, I've shared this before, I was terrified to post content online, and definitely to share in other people's Facebook groups. It's just so fascinating how much stuff came up for me there. And now we're just like all over the internet and share all the things. But I think this want to be like, this want to be nice, this almost like the lack of directness or speaking your truth. Like I think this is tied into speaking your truth, owning your results, taking up space. I think this shows up in content and in marketing and in sales conversation. So we've been talking a lot about this through the lens of serving clients and through leading your team. But I think this also is correlated to how you might show up in your marketing, your sales process. And so again, this is why I think this is so important, because this is such a way to like take your power back. And there's such a difference when you're creating content, when you're creating marketing from a place of I just want to be the nice person online, I just want to be liked, versus I want to speak my truth. I want to say the thing I know people need to hear. I want to speak up and to share my voice and to share this value bomb or this truth bomb, right? Such different places to lead from. When we think about thought leadership, right? Thought leadership is this. Thought leadership is being really clear on what your opinion is and being willing to share that directly. Wanting to be nice and wanting to be liked makes it very tough to have any thought leadership. And thought leadership, I think, is so important for all of us in business currently. And I kind of alluded to this early, but I think the other places that this has cost me time and money, I think is I've been copied quite a bit, and so I would not say this cost me time or money. It maybe cost me time and mental time, just in terms of like growing the female balls to like go have that conversation and to address that. And I think that's such a CEO level skill set. I think the other place that I see this, both that I've really had to clean up and that I've support clients to clean this up, is just around things like client payments and people being late on their payments or defaulting on their payments. And just seeing, I mean, these are all boundaries essentially, right? But just seeing the importance of like, oh wow, it's really fascinating how this will literally impact you as a business owner and affect, when you're not willing to have those boundaries, when you're not willing to speak up, when you're caring more about being liked than you are about running your business the way it really needs to be run, and really speaking to things like people need to pay their invoices on time. So I think these are all just different areas that, again, I think we can hear something like, what's the big deal? Like, I just want to be likable and nice. And also, like, really, how important is it to be direct? How important is it to hold boundaries? How important is it to have this clear, direct honest feedback communication. But if we start to look at some of these things I'm sharing or that I've noticed in other clients, and when I talk to you about my client who's saying they're going to probably let someone go for this reason, I think in that example, and I think this is what I've had to learn, I've had to let people go in my business. I think that's something I've a skill set, or this is part of that same skill set I've had to learn. But I think one of the reasons for my clients' company for is they need to be able to have feedback and let some people go and be able to identify where the challenges are. And if someone is just so much more worried about being nice and kind and like sweet, as opposed to like, we really need to look at what the business needs and to be able to have those tough conversations and to make those tough decisions, right? That just becomes a liability in a company instead of an asset. And so I think that's just another place we can see, oh, this actually does really start to affect business. And we can start to see how it would be really tough to grow a business past 6 figures to multi 6, 7 figures without really leaning into this skill set. I think for those of my clients who are holding big, either large clients, like the client example I just gave, or large programs with lots of people coming through them, I think that also it is just really tough to not only like, we talk so much about booking clients and filling programs. That is one thing, but it is a whole nother thing to hold a program and to hold that many humans and to serve that many humans. And I really think it is damn near impossible to hold. I mean, let's be honest, we've seen a lot of people in our space create programs like this, sell them out, and then like disappear, and we've never heard about them or from them ever again. And look, there's multiple, myriad reasons for that. I do think one of the reasons is it's one thing to be good at marketing and sales and to fill a program. It is another thing to have the leadership skills and the nervous system and the mindset and the CEO role to be able to hold and sustain that many humans. And I think one of the skill sets that makes you able to hold $1 million launch company business, right? That many clients is exactly what we're talking about here. And again, this does not mean you can't be loved. This does not mean you can't be liked. This does not mean everybody in your program doesn't think you're awesome. And also, it means that you're leading from a different place. That isn't what you're leading with. You're leading from a place of service. You're also willing to not be liked. This is what I was sharing about with my philosophy as a coach. I have to be willing not to be liked. I have to know there's one client right now. I have a call with her tomorrow, and I know she loves me, and I know she appreciates me. But I know one of the reasons she does is I don't think she always loves the feedback I give her. But that's also why she loves me, because that's what she's paying me for. It's like the other client I mentioned who told me like that's one of the reasons they keep renewing with me is they don't like it. But also it's exactly what they need in their business is I'm willing to not be liked. I'm willing to say the things that other people aren't willing to say. I think when you're holding lots of humans at once, that has to be okay for you to do on a larger scope and on a larger scale. If you listen to the podcast, last week we had Julia motherfucking Wells on there, and she was talking about this through a slightly different lens and through a slightly different scope. But she was talking about how, quite honestly, to make millions, she's made 4.5 million, I think, at this point in her business. Definitely check out the podcast. I'll see if I can grab the episode link and drop it, because I think it was a really great episode. But she was talking about how, at that level, you really have to be okay with people projecting on you all of their shit and to basically not be liked to hold and to create that kind of success and know how to regulate your nervous system through that. And I think it's a tangent of what we're talking about today, because I think there's the skill set of what does that mean? Then it means being willing to show up as the CEO, being willing to do your job, being willing to ask of you, being willing to say no when you mean no instead of yes, being willing not to people please, being willing to hold boundaries, being willing to be direct and honest and give feedback and lead, right? And I think it's also knowing that the more money you make, the more people you hold, the more you are just going to have people project on you, not like you. And the example I was giving for myself of, and I think many of us have learned, like the easiest way to avoid that, right, is either to shrink or to do things that make us super nice and super likable. And that's really not the greatest leadership skill if you want to take your business to multi-6 and $1 million, or like multi-6 figures to $1 million plus. So I hope this was valuable for you. I know, again, this is not the like sexiest conversation, but I think it's such an important one, and I think it's one that I think there's just such an opportunity for, and if you're willing to lean into this, I think it can open up so much for you in business. Yes, monetarily, but I also think just in terms of your own, well, efficiency in business, your profitability. It is amazing. My business, I think, is really profitable, and I have a very efficient team. Part of the reason is I've really leaned into this leadership skill, which means I give direct feedback with my team. We have the conversations, we address things. I practice saying no instead of yes when I want to say no, right? We have boundaries. We have all these things in place that really, yes, systems and processes, but that really allow those to actually be well-oiled and to function, which means we are efficient, which means we are profitable, which means I'm also not tinkering in a bunch of stuff because I don't want to tell my team what I need them to do. And so I think this can just be, yes, valuable on the money side, but also just in terms of your actual time, your spaciousness, the way you actually enjoy your business and your life. Again, I think the irony is the less you're trying to be nice, the less you're trying to be liked, the, I think, more peace and joy you'll have, the better client results you'll get, the more you're able to show up and serve, and the more you're able to be a CEO and run your business like a business. And I think, again, the irony is the more you actually will be liked, but liked because you are respected for your work, as opposed to because you're just a pushover and the person that someone knows that they can take advantage of. So I hope this is valuable for you. I know we'll have a couple of you who missed the opening segments. I'll drop that again. Sorry for the tech issues. I have no idea what happened. And if any of you are listening to this and you're like, okay, not the sexiest topic ever, Kim, but also I'm hearing you and I hear this and I know that leadership and understanding how to think like a CEO, show up in my role as a CEO, run my business like a business is really important. I do want to grow to multi-six figures. I do want to grow to $1 million. Yes, I need to know my messaging. Yes, I need to know my marketing strategy. Yes, I need a customer journey. Yes, I need to know sales and how to bring in money in my business, but I also want to know how to hold and keep that money, how to be the kind of business owner that has a well-oiled machine, that is leading a team, that isn't bleeding resources and time everywhere, that's able to hold more humans. This really lands for me. I would love to support you. This is a big part of what I'm supporting clients with as they're getting into those multi-six figures in business. And obviously, if you're new to business, this is important too. And I'd love to support you with all of this. And let's create good habits and patterns and behaviors from the start, and not later on in business. And I think this shows up, like we said, in everything from your messaging, how you're taking up space, how you're owning your work, in your marketing, in your sales. So I think this shows up on both sides. I would love to connect with you. I will drop a discovery call link. We are starting to book. I know an intensive for January. We're starting to book out into next year. I do, though, because of that, because people have been kind of booking with availability, we do still have some availabilities this year for intensives and one-on-one spots, but also we're booking further out because there's just limited spots. So whether you're looking for now or a little bit later, if you're interested, if this feels like, this sounds like me, I will drop a discovery call link. I would love to connect with you. I would love to support you. And then I will be back next week and we will chat and hang them. Bye, y'all.